You're still listening to Breakfast Connect on Africa Business Radio. My name is Bimbola Awuyele. So on Monday, December 7th, Ghanaians went to the poll to elect their next president and members of the parliament. Over 30 million votes were cast as they sought to pick the next leader between the incumbent Nana Akufo-Addo and his main challenger and former president John Dramani Mahama. So the election, dubbed by some international media as dull yet significant. Dull because, unlike other acts of mass civic political duty across the continent, there was little or no violence recorded. In fact, one journalist I spoke to said people went about their normal businesses on the day of the election. Schools were open, offices remained operational, no national holiday was declared on account of the election. In fact, the Ghanaian model is now being considered as something for other African and perhaps non-African nations to study. One Ghanaian journalist called it the democratic trailblazer of this turbulent continent. Now, the initial timeline given to announce the result had to be exceeded, but hours after, Ghana's Electoral Commission called it in favor of the incumbent Nana Akufo-Addo. The eloquent 76-year-old will now serve a second term in office, leading the nation's 31 million people as the world comes out of a global pandemic, a health crisis that became an economic crisis. Now, for more on what to expect from the Ghanaian economy from the next 4 years, we turn to Chris Koney, a journalist and marketing communications professional. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hi, what's up?
All right, so we are 2 days after the initial timeline. The Ghana's Electoral Commission now have called the results in favor of incumbent President Nana Akufo-Addo.
Yeah.
But the Financial Times described this election as being dull. Probably, due to the level or lack of violence, which usually comes with electoral processes in Africa. First of all, what do you make of the Financial Times description as the election being dull? And how did Ghana manage to have such a peaceful process?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, and I think it's rather unfortunate per the context in which the Financial Times referred to the elections to be dull. If having violence or pockets of violence here and there makes an election active, I don't think that is what we seek to achieve or that's what we stand for. And as you know, Ghana is a beacon of democracy. And, we've had successive elections in the Fourth Republic. There's been peaceful transfer of power from one elected, government to the other. So, when it comes to such things, yes, in the past, we've had instances where there have been pockets of violence here and there, but that's not the beauty of democracy. And for us, we want to go into elections where we don't have such things. We want to go to elections where there's integrity, where at the end of the day, the masses or the general public would wholeheartedly accept the results of the elections, devoid of the shenanigans, the skirmishes and the violence here and there. So for us, I personally, or in particular, I want to even welcome it as a good news because we are getting there. We are developing our democracy. Our democracy is growing. We are getting results. Yeah.
All right. So the pandemic has changed the way things have been done in virtually every sector, every facet of our lives, and this election was no different, especially from the campaign process even up until when votes were cast during the election. Now, how much of a role did the coronavirus pandemic play in determining the next president or even parliamentary candidates, do you think?
Yes, as we are aware, when it comes to democracy, when it comes to electioneering process in most parts of Africa, you always see the mammoth rallies, the big gatherings, the big parties where you have creative arts practitioners coming on board to treat, to entertain followers of the various political parties. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we couldn't have much of those. However, there were instances, or there were some constituencies where the candidates, gave caution to the wind and went ahead to have such big gatherings, of course, but then putting in COVID-19 protocols. As to how effective that was, I'm not in the position to say. But then it actually changed the face of campaigning in Ghana, whereby you realize a lot of people had to do house-to-house campaign. A lot of people from the parliamentarians, from the presidential candidates needed to engage key stakeholders, had to do low-key engagement, move into the communities, reach people, one-on-one basically. So it actually took away that beauty whereby you see several thousands of people thrown in a particular venue with fanfare, with brass band here and there, to throw their weight behind their candidates. In all, I think the candidates managed to send home their messages. That's how come they got their votes, because, in times like this, you need to be creative, you need to be innovative, and the use of technology became in handy, where people were using SMS, people were using social media, people were using traditional media, a lot of advertisements, a lot of, activations on social media, just to make sure they send their messages down to their people and the masses as a whole.
Now, piggybacking a little bit on that, what we've seen, and the Ghanaian elections are not the only ones that we've seen this year. The Americans also just had their election November 6th, and we've seen some other African countries go through the electoral process as well. Uganda are also preparing for an election in January, and the pandemic has sort of taught us that we can do things digitally now, which means that less costs in preparing for elections. Elections usually come with a huge bucket, a huge budget with campaigning. Do you see, this as the future of campaigning for elections, which means that things can be done cheaper?
I think it brings a new dynamics, or it opens up opportunity to look at exploring new avenues for political players when it comes to their campaign. But, as you know, we are in this part of the world where we have internet issues when it comes to internet penetration and all that. People would always want to stick with a traditional way of sending across messages. People will still want to have the face-to-face engagement. People want to have the big rallies and all that. But of course, yes, it's obvious that it's possible to send messages using other channels, which people would want to explore and use going forward. But it will still not take away the fact that in this part of the world, we still believe that we need to go down to the people. We need to have that face-to-face encounter. We need to have that, first-hand experience with the people, to engage them, to make sure they are getting what we are saying. So I think it opens an opportunity to explore other avenues in our processes. However, it doesn't take away, or it doesn't change completely what the status quo has been over the years.
All right. So, while he was campaigning, President Akufo-Addo in 2016 made some promises, part of which included, that he would build a factory in each of the 216 districts of the country to provide employment for people. He said he would build one dam in each of the villages of the dry northern regions. he will give each of the 275 constituencies in the country $1 million equivalent every year. To what extent did he fulfill those promises?
When you look at comparing the results or what the results were in 2016 and 2019, you realize a decline for the votes in Nana Akufo-Addo. Yes, there were a lot of promises, and people went out there. People felt there was a need for change. There was a wind blowing around for change. People thought, in 2016, the then candidate Akufo-Addo made a lot of promises, some of which you mentioned, from one district, one factory, free SHS, and all that. And I think it went down to the people. People thought it was an opportunity for them to have a new experience and, to alleviate their suffering and all that. However, in power, when he assumed office, unfortunately, not much has been done. His government has been saddled with corruption. There's been instances here and there where we've had issues about corruption, and not most of the promises have been fulfilled. So I think that reflects in sort of results, we've had for this election, because you realize he had 51%, whereby the closest candidates, that's John Dramani Mahama, had a bit over 49. Don't forget, there is a contention. The opposition is still contesting results in certain parts. And should it go to court, or, from the figures we are looking at, if really this should go another way, it changes the dynamics and it changes the difference between Nana Akufo-Addo and John Dramani Mahama. It's unlike 2016, where it went beyond $1 million from even the onset. So you realize that, some of the supposed failed promises by the government has actually played a role in losing some of the votes. And when it comes to the parliamentary, MPP unfortunately have lost about 33 seats to the opposition NDC. And I think these are some of the things that accounted for it. Promises made in 2016, which to the people has not been fulfilled.
All right. So he's now president again for another 4-year term. Considering, when you consider what he has done, some of his achievements in the last 4 years, what do you project a second term of Nana Akufo-Addo would bring for Ghanaians?
A second term for Nana Akufo-Addo, bearing any issues or any changes, or we're still waiting to see what the opposition party is going to do. If John Dramani's NDC will be heading to court, what the outcome of the court proceedings will be, that's still in limbo. We are still yet to know what activities or, what decisions they are going to make. However, should we have a formidable opposition as we had for the last 4 years, where every activity, every action, every policy of the government is scrutinized to the extent that they take them for each word, I think that gives the opportunity to see a lot more being done this time.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with us, Chris. We look forward, to having another interesting and fruitful conversation with you in future concerning all things Ghana.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And enjoy the rest of the day, sir.
Yes, sir. And you too.
Okay.
We've been talking to Chris Koney, journalist and marketing communications professional, on the just concluded Ghana elections and what to expect from the Ghanaian economy under new president and former incumbent president Nana Akufo-Addo, who is serving a second 4-year term. You're still listening to Breakfast Connect here on Africa Business Radio. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back after this.